Welcome to episode 180 of The Lab. I'm Brad Barton.
I'm Phil Barton.
This episode is an unexpected continuation of episode 179. If you'd like to hear that episode or any of the other 178, you can find them by visiting thelabwithbrad.com.
Apparently we made all sorts of mistakes in episode 179.
Yes, let's start with the pterosaur.
Yes.
Which is not a social dinosaur that runs around giving other people dares.
It's a terrible joke, and I apologize for that wholeheartedly.
Pterosaur. With a T. Pterodactyl, pterodon, pterosaur.
Apparently starts with a P. Does that one start with a P too?
I don't know. My computer talks to me. I don't necessarily ever find out how something is spelled.
Well, screw it.
That's actually the problem. My computer talks to me, and sometimes it mispronounces things.
Like,
And when you're self-taught or independent researcher, whatever you want to call it, sometimes you get a word and you think it's said one way, and everybody from college says it some other way entirely.
Yeah, so thus we are mispronouncing things or pronouncing them as we feel, and confusing the crap out of people.
Yeah, you could go on the interweb and type in pronounce whatever word, and you will get little videos and audio things that will pop up. Some of them are also computer voices, and so I don't really trust them. I've never run into any of these engines that doesn't mispronounce a word here or there. So, kind of screwed as far as that goes. But the pterosaur, not actually dinosaurs. They branched out from the archosaurs. And another branch of the archosaurs became the dinosaurs.
But no echolocating for them.
No echolocating for them. Despite being quite bat-like, there are no echolocating reptiles.
Yes, this was established. You were curious about it. You said it half-heartedly, I don't think.
Yeah, I got curious. Yes, I looked. The only critters that can echolocate, there's rats apparently do it a little bit.
Really?
Yes. Bats, of course. Bunch of the whales and dolphins. Humans, sometimes if born blind, will spontaneously start clicking their tongue. And especially if they start at an early age, they can get pretty darn good at it.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I know you do that occasionally, but that was like a
but I'm not very good at it is the issue. But yeah, I do use it. Our ears are so shaped that certain frequencies come in a little delayed. Sort of spreads the frequency out for us. That part of the ear, by the way, the part that sticks out, that's called the penne.
The flappy bit?
Yeah, the flappy bit.
I don't know
Latin for feather. Right? Right, the flappy bit.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, welcome to this show on science.
You reminded me, though, that once we were at Gasworks, and you were trying to demonstrate shadow vision to me, which is our rudimentary echolocating ability. And there's these big cement arches, and you walked me through them, and I hesitated as I was going through it because something was happening.
Yeah, you can feel it. What I was actually showing you, that's passive, right? You don't have to click for that. And these things got different names as different researchers looked at them, but if you close your eyes and walk by something big and looming, you can feel it. And that's a little passive sonar, just the environmental noise is enough to give us the information. As opposed to deliberately clicking your tongue, which I'm not going to do on the recording. Because,
Thank you.
Yeah, no matter how tempting it is. Camp. Not...
Yes.
What did I say? Providence. It's not Central Atlantic Magmatic Providence. It's prominence. As in some big piece of rock sticking up, a prominence.
That makes sense.
We were looking at, I was sitting there and Phil was looking at the animated map of the continents, climbing around over billions of years.
Mm-hmm.
And the first few billion years, there wasn't all that much land.
No, actually, and also it kind of goes the way your show does, which is it goes back to as much information as we've got on what was up to with the land, and you got these little islands and nothing's happening. But if you watch the years speeding by, they are just trucking. They go absolutely crazy until it starts getting into these periods where we have life and it starts slowing down.
Yeah, it actually does slow down the playback?
Absolutely.
More stuff was happening.
Yeah, also maybe there's more data, so they have more to show. Or okay, moving on. Where were we? Pangea. What were we talking about?
Oh yeah. So at the end of the Carboniferous, end of the Permian, wasn't it? When Pangea finally got together.
Pangea finally got together. Yeah, at the very end, right before the bloody Triassic.
Right, and then it immediately started to fall apart again. Well, It looks like immediately. Tens of millions of years are going by, but on the YouTube video, it looks like this one bit of continent sort of bounces off the thing.
The bit that apparently becomes Eurasia. It's like, hi, I love you, and then I give up.
Yeah, so we have Gondwana, which lived in the south. And I don't know if you can tell on the video, but it sort of lived on the South Pole, and then sort of wandered north away from it, and then went back. It sort of wiggled over the millions of years.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, there was this chunk that had parts of Europe, parts of Asia, and parts of North America, all stuck together. And then it came down and hit Gondwana, and that's Pangea. Then the bit came down, kind of split down the middle. And the bit that was Europe and Asia moved away from Pangea. And that split down the middle. Well, I don't know. You saw the picture. I don't know how middle it was, proportionally wise.
Well, it looks more like an explosion, or I don't know. We've given up on each other.
That was the little bitty baby Atlantic Ocean right there. And that happened towards the end of the Triassic.
Yeah. Right when. Yeah.
I think that's where the camp eruption happened. I think that's where, for about 600,000 years, the most lava that's ever poured out in one eruption poured out. And the rock got deposited on North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. So they've spread apart since then, but they still all got rock left over from that eruption.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
The history of rock.
Around. I am a little tempted to do an episode or two of geology, just because I keep not knowing how all this happens.
Yeah, the Columbia Valley is bloody fascinating. Very large vents at some point. We're not talking like a single volcano. It's just big tears happened at some point, and just lava everywhere. And it's what the Columbia Valley is made up of. This is why I get so confused with geology, because you go into the Cascades and it's all granite, which is also apparently igneous rock. But
we checked that today too. This is why I'm tempted to do the thing on geology. You asked me, is granite from lava? And I didn't know. The answer is yes. But I think the difference between, say, granite and basalt and a bunch of these other igneous volcanic rocks is their chemical composition. But it might be how long it takes them to cool down. It might be how they were deposited. Like I said, I'm tempted to do a couple episodes on geology.
Seems like it'd be a good idea.
What were you talking about moments before I interrupted you?
Oh, just the difference between the granite in the Cascades and what that looks like, which is, kind of marbly and it's got quartz in there and stuff, versus all of the rock that's in the Columbia Valley is this black. It's practically uniform.
It's a dull rock.
Well, no, it does these neat things when the hills erode and you get to see inside of them. There's these cylindrical chunks of rock that are made from very slowly cooling lava, and they're vertical, and they're like they look like octagons, sort of. They're really fascinating, and they violate. There's a rule in geology about horizontal first, as far as when you see lines, in the sides of hills or whatnot. If they're going wonky, if they're going vertical or sideways, the first assumption is supposed to be at one point they were horizontal.
Right.
For these columns of cooled lava rock, that's not true. They cooled that way.
So they've been standing up since the beginning.
Yeah, or since whenever they decided that they would go ahead and be
rock.
Well,
I figured when you turn into that rock, that would count as the beginning for you, the rock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I am now fully formed and not rolling around inside the planet or wherever I was before I came shooting out of these vents.
Oh,
Ridge, not trench.
Ridge, not trench. This should be the name of this episode. This is the dumbest thing I said. He was mentioning the most volcanically active area on the planet, and it's in the middle of the Atlantic. I said mid-Atlantic trench. It did not dive down. It sticks up. It's the mid-Atlantic ridge.
Because the other famous bit is the Pacific, whatever it's called, trench. So maybe that's why. Because
there's plenty of trenches in the ocean, you bet. But this is a ridge.
It's special.
I assume there are other ones. I don't know their names. But anywhere where the plates at the ocean bottom are being pushed apart by new rock forming from magma.
That would make, so it bulges. So it's a ridge. All right.
Ran into some interesting things. I haven't confirmed this yet. Just a conversation on Twitter I saw, actually. I guess under pressure, when the water is being forced down into the mantle, which is rock, not magma.
Okay.
Sort of rock like glaciers or ice, if that makes any sense. Solid, but still kind of oozy over a long time period.
Bet you there's a term for that. But yeah.
I was trying to avoid those terms.
Oozy, I like that.
Oozy, plastic, or viscous over a long time period. Oh, yes, viscous, that's the word. Anyway, I guess when water under pressure gets mixed with those rocks, it makes them melt at a lower temperature.
Oh, okay.
So all over the place on the ocean floor are these plates that are on sort of a slow motion conveyor belt where they get built on one end and then they go way over to the other side and get sucked back down to be remelted. And because the water is there and it's making the rock more viscous, it happens faster if the plate is entirely underwater. And so ocean floors are usually not any older than about 200 million years.
I see, because they keep getting chewed up.
Yeah.
And spat back out. I see.
So there's a lot of the biosphere we haven't got fossils for. Anything that lived and died on one of those plates, we don't know. Anyway, so there was that theory about basaltic eruptions being caused by an impact. For that, the one that ended the Triassic, the camp eruption.
Yeah.
If that's true, then it hit on the opposite side of the planet from where all the land was. It hit in the middle of the ocean. There'd be no evidence left.
Yeah, because all of that would be new rock at this point. It's because it's been how long?
Yeah.
So it's been sucked under and spat out who knows how many times.
About 200 million years ago. Huh. There might be just a little bit of evidence being chewed up as we speak. I wanted to mention, it's one of the things I got curious about and looked up. There are still tree ferns. What I didn't mention when I mentioned that sentence totally made sense, I promise.
Okay.
The tree ferns still spread by spores. So we do have some tree-like plants that spread by spores. But apparently, if you're a tree-like plant or a plant in general and you got spores, they need a lot of moisture. This is one of the advantages of the seed. you as a plant can live in drier places. Oh, echolocation. The only non-mammals I found were a couple of birds, oil birds and swiftlets, and that's all I know about those birds is that they echolocate some, and that their echolocation isn't as good as, say, bats, and nowhere good as, say, dolphins.
But they've also got neat names, like swiftlets.
Swiftlets. And what is an oil bird?
Yeah, I mean, can you get oil from them?
I mean, you just squeeze it out like a sponge.
Is this an untapped resource?
Harder than...
Feel bad for the birds all of a sudden.
Yeah. It's like whaling, only much harder. Oh!
One of the things... Oh, wait, what?
Wait, no, you got something.
I did, okay. So one of the things I was misleading on is I talked about therapsids as if they were one critter.
Right.
Not true. The particular critter I was talking about is apparently called Placeri. Oh, let me see if I can pronounce this.
Yeah, see, you too.
Placerias was one of the largest herbivores in the late Triassic. Mm-hmm. Here I go again.
Yeah, the beak eating.
And there's actually a couple different places I found it. One of them said it could get up to 2 tons, but most everybody talks about it being 1 ton. But still, pretty big critter. Oh, and the other critter that I mentioned that I was going to expand on a little bit, if I can pronounce this, Sphenosuchia. Yes.
All right.
Got that right.
I believe you.
The greyhound of the Triassic. Called that because of its body shape. It's basically, when trying to describe this, the easiest description is to look at a modern-day greyhound, give it a tail and scales, and send it off to the races. I mean, if you were going to have races in the Triassic, you would want this critter. Its skull, they were looking at it, they believe it's an ancestor for the crocodiles, I mentioned that, but I'm getting conflicting information.
Oh, I get conflicting information every time I do research for a show, especially with fossils and natural history.
So there's debate about whether or not this was in the middle of the evolution of the crocodile. In other words, all of the modern day crocodilians. There you go. If every member of that family went through this phase, or if this was an offshoot and they died off on their own. But the notable thing about them is that they have their legs underneath them, not off to the side.
I never did find the guy's name. We were talking about this last night. Why bother with legs underneath you? Like an extreme example being the modern day giraffe. You know, there's an animal on stilts. Why that instead of, say, a gecko or even a crocodile with the legs sticking out sideways? Turns out that when you have legs sticking out sideways to move, to walk, to run, your torso has to sort of squiggle side to side. Like if you take away the legs entirely and look at the way a snake moves, that's the motion of the spine.
Yeah.
And
wiggle leg.
Unfortunately, when you're doing that, you're collapsing your lungs on one side and then the other. And some guy did some studies on some reptiles, and he finds that, in general, they don't breathe when they're running.
Which would make you not able to run very far.
Yeah, like crocodiles, for example, are capable of an enormous, powerful burst of energy, but they can't keep it up for that long. I mean, plenty long enough to kill you, that's why they're still here. But...
They're doing well with that whole death thing.
You compare that to animals with their feet underneath them. When they're on the gallop, the motion actually helps them breathe more. And another way to make it easier to breathe is to go up on your back legs. Have the bipedal posture. And there are a bunch of animals there are a bunch of animals in the Triassic and in Permian too, I think, that were sort of halfway between that. Some of them turned into the dinosaurs, actually. They look like when they were at the run, they'd go up on their hind legs, and the rest of the time they'd sit on all 4 feet. And it looks like those are what developed into things like velociraptors and the T-Rex, the bipedal dinosaurs.
It's hard for me to tell as far as the I'm gonna try to say it again. Sphenosuchia.
Yeah.
Most of the pictures I see of them, they're on 4 legs, but there is one in the same sort of family, which is actually called a Sadoposusus. Oh, God bless it.
That critter.
Anyways, another version of that where the hind legs are bigger and they're pictured as they're pictured with their 4 legs off the ground.
Yeah, and I bet there's arguments about whether or not they really stood that way.
All we've got is bones.
Yeah, and usually they don't show up in the rock, like every bone in place and labeled. Usually you get fragments of bones. This is why you get news stories and headlines when they find a complete skeleton, is because it's so rare and so exciting. Look, this is how it actually was put together. So, the reason we did this episode was to correct some things and expand on some things. I think we've done that. Yeah, it's also because it is the 4th of July. I know this comes out on the 5th of July in the evening. But this is a holiday, and I think it's time to go do fireworks and beer. See you next time.
Say bye, right? Goodbye.